Janis Joplin was very close-knit friends with Jimi Hendrix. She also knew that Jimi did not take his own life as far as choking on vomit after drinking. She knew that Jimi was alcohol poisoned by his former manager, who did not like Jimi because Jimi had a bad habit of signing with anyone with a recording label, and he did not accept the oath. Janis was talking about this among fellow musicians, whom she could not express enough to. Meanwhile, they would go behind her back and tell Jimi Hendrix's former manager what Janis was talking about. So Janis was getting prepared in 1970 for a concert in a hotel. As they went to check on her, the goons have already been in her room and gave her an overdose of heroin. Janis Joplin was getting ready to blow the whistle on Jimi Hendrix's death, and they could not have that, so they killed her. No one knew why someone wanted to kill Otis Reddy. As his body lies slumped in the pier where the fishermen fish, they had to hook line his body out the water, as you see here. Otis was beaten to death because he and James Brown was getting ready to orchestrate a distribution deal for black music. It's the same thing Damon Dash did with Suge Knight, and they took their riches. Well, back in those days, this thing was unheard of, and still today. So they killed him. They beat him. Now you're probably asking yourself, why not James Brown too? Because they felt like James Brown would be more profitable. So they made James a deal. James accepted the oath. Otis Reddy was a big man, so they couldn't come to him by themselves. They came with a few people. They caught him off guard, they beat him to death and threw him in the pier. James Brown lied motionless into the funeral because James knew why they took his friend's life. When they made James a deal, he did not back down, nor did he think about doing a distribution deal ever again. James took the oath, and he signed with the Brotherhood. Blood, that is. Meanwhile, Otis had his funeral, and you notice they're carrying his casket by the waist, indicating that he was not of Brotherhood, nor did he sign his name in blood, nor was his life a sacrifice for anyone in the industry. But James Brown signed over his life to fulfill the legacy of the Brotherhood. Now, after James accepted the oath and accepted the Brotherhood, they let him rub elbows with none other than Al Sharpton. See, Al Sharpton gave in a long time ago. His job was to orchestrate to James about the BSing of the NAACP, the Black Caucus, so on and so forth. James Brown was shocked to hear the news, but nevertheless, James played the game and he played it well. Whenever there was an event of a rioting, of anything that was unjustified to blacks, they would call James to have a concert. So when you hear the song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, you can only wonder, did he really mean it? Or was it a song to fulfill the brotherhood, to calm and ease the minds of black folk? I'll let that ponder while you guys think about what was just said. So when you hear the song, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Do it do you justice? Did you really get it? Some of you had no idea why James made that record. Now, if it's sincere, that's a great thing. But the song was used to calm the black folks down. So was James, because he accepted the oath of the brotherhood. Whenever they have a situation that when black folks were being slaughtered in the streets, they called trumpet players, musicians, Harry Belafonte, Stevie Wonder, and they still do that today. That's why our people look for idolaters to solve our problems. These are just men in sheep clothing. James was a bad musician. He was a bad man when it came to music and dancing, but that's about all. We're not here to downplay it. We're only here to tell you the truth, that James was here to dumbfound you with his music. He never told you the truth. He was part of the brotherhood. After he saw his friend die brutally, James got with the program. And when he's had a change of heart, they started making mockery of him. They started saying he was drunk. They started saying he was on this, he was on that. And James and Michael both knew the truth, what they done. They talked about it quite often, getting out, but they knew they couldn't. You can only blood out once you accept the oath. But some way, they believed they could tell the people what was going on. James was the first they took in out to make Michael get back into gear. But it didn't work. As James lay motionless, they called his friend, his mentor, who gave him the ropes to begin with, Al Sharpton. Why did they call Al Sharpton? Because they wanted Al Sharpton to fulfill the role of an usher who cares about a human life to black folk. But when Al Sharpton got the news why they wanted him really there, to show support for the brotherhood, Al Sharpton didn't hesitate. Al Sharpton knows this game and he knows it well. He played it better than any football player. He sits next to the coffin with his hands in a pyramid, letting his brotherhood know, I'm here with James, but I'm not about the black and proud. I'm only here to fulfill a legacy, to make our people feel comfortable. I totally understand my role. Isn't that something? A man that sits before you, who's your mentor, and actually is a devil in sheep clothing. This man meant James Brown no good from the moment he met him. He was just using James to prolong his own life. Godfather's soul, James Brown's son-in-law, Darren Chip Lamar, shot and killed. Why is that? You see, Darren knew the truth. He knew that his stepfather did not die of a cardiac arrest. James Brown was poisoned, and Darren was going to tell the truth. Investigators said that the shooter was waiting for Lamar, the neighborhood where Lamar lived in his gated community. When he drove up to park his car in the garage, he was confronted. An altercation of some sort took place. That's when the victim was shot multiple times, said police officer Eric Swartz. I think it was somebody that knew him, Swartz said. The witness said Lamar then got into a car and drove 4 miles to Northside Hospital, where he died. CBS 46 talked with Lamar in January 2007, only weeks after James Brown died Christmas Day 2006. Lamar said he felt his father-in-law's death was suspicious. There's not a bone in my body that believes my father-in-law died from congestive heart failure, Lamar said. Lamar questions Brown's death because there was no autopsy. That is genius, because the Illuminati, who are the music industry, Clive Davis and all the rest of them, but Clive Davis being the ringleader of black entertainment, gives orders to cover up everything. You understand? We'll talk more as we go along the way what Clive Davis is orchestrated. See, James Brown was taken out because he was getting tired. And as they get tired, they start telling. and they can't risk the fact that these celebrities will tell the truth on what they really do in the industry. Sam Cooke lie motionless, slumped over in a cheap motel room. They tell you that Sam Cooke died because he was trying to chase a prostitute into the manager's office to get his money that he felt like she'd taken from him. That is all hogwash. Sam Cooke was killed for his publishings. They came to Sam Cooke on several occasions to make a deal with him, to try to get him the reason to accept the brotherhood and come on in like everyone else. Sam said, no, I'm my own man. I own my own publishing. Sam Cooke was beaten to death. His blood, if you look to the left shoulder, is really trickling with blood from his head. They took an angle shot to make it look like he died from a gunshot wound. He died from trauma to the head. Sam Cooke's head was totally open. This also can be found in the book of Etta James. Beaten to death by gangsters because he wouldn't comply, much like Jimi Hendrix. But instead of giving him a drug overdose, they beat him down. The blood was dripping so bad it dripped all down his knee. Sam Cooke didn't comply with the powers that be. It was unheard of for a man to own his own publishings and own his own masters. So for this, Sam Cooke paid with his life. The beautiful thing is Sam Cooke was very spiritual. So let's hope the Most High have his soul asleep until judgment. Because he never took the oath and he never sold his soul, nor did he write his name in blood. Sam Cooke is lying in there motionless so the people can see him in a glass casket. Sam Cooke's life was taken as an example of what they tell you you cannot do. They want to totally control you. They want to do everything to you and not for you. This is a lesson to be learned about the so-called industry.